broadcast network, AfterBuzz TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads in over 150 countries, and your number one source for after-show entertainment. AfterBuzz TV, the destination for TV superfans, producing aftershows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows, interviewing celebrities and showrunners, and bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
Oh, goddamn, that's good bourbon. Hello, fight fans. Welcome to another episode of UFC on AfterBuzz TV. Of course, my name is Jay Tan, one half of the Ugly Laptop Brothers, and my cohort, my tag team partner of that.
Cohort again?
Cohort. Yes.
A cohort.
Cohort.
Oh.
I put the T there.
Okay.
But he is quite a whore. George Hermoza coming in with nice, snappily dressed, fashionable T-shirt.
It's laundry day.
Shut up.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, I got nothing on that.
Yeah.
It's like our new Reebok uniform. Everybody
right.
needs to be wearing U of MMA.
That's right. Hopefully I don't get fired for saying the wrong thing. Too soon? Is he on yet?
Of course, we're here covering UFC on Fox 16. TJ Dillashaw defending his title against Renan Barao. The rematch from, 2 years ago, right?
May of 2014.
Was it 14 on there?
Yeah.
Okay, so over a year ago.
Wait, you say UFC on Fox 16?
UFC on Fox 16. They've done 16 of those shows on Big Fox, believe it or not.
I would say I remember the first one, but I guess that one wasn't really considered the first one, the Velasquez dos Santos.
I think that was.
No, but it was just kind of like, it wasn't really, because essentially their contract with Fox hasn't started yet at that time. It was just kind of like here's a bonus thing.
No, that was
just
the first
fight.
one.
No,
even though it was a one fight, 1 hour special.
Yeah, but I don't think it was considered the first one. It was just a bonus, like an extra. Look it up. I don't think it's considered the first one.
I was going to say, we've got, joining us here is Joe Buzza, of course, in the YouTube chat room. We will also be joined later on by Stitch Duran.
Dude, Joe Buzza's the man.
He really is. He is certainly an extended part of the AfterBuzz team. I mean, the guy's all over with all over, not just our show, but many of the others. But Stitch Duran should be coming on as well. We'll talk about the what do you want to call the everything that's gone on. I think we may have Stitch. Hey, there's the man.
What's up, my man Jay?
All right, how you doing there, sir?
Oh, come on, man. That's a silly question to ask. I'm doing fine, though. You know what? I'm here with Charlotte, with Carla, with Homie, and
the
we're
whole family.
Having a great time, brother. You know.
Oh, wow. Like Carlos Santana?
Yeah. So we're gonna go see Southpaw after this.
Okay, all right. You're keeping in the are you keeping in a fight weekend for you? You did a show. You're cornering somebody yesterday, right?
Yeah, David Shumanov from Kazakhstan. He won the WBO Cruiserweight Championship of the World, and I just left him a while ago. We had a nice little celebration, but he's the first one in Kazakhstan to win 2 championships in 2 different divisions. So my hats go off to him. So yeah,
nice.
Next weekend, I have the World Series of Fighting I'm gonna be working with.
Okay.
Friday from 1 to 3, I'm gonna be doing an autograph signing with a couple of the champions at Fight Shop. So
that's in Vegas, right?
Pardon me?
That's in Vegas, right?
That's in Las Vegas, and
right.
Just got a call from Corey Schaefer, the president of the ISKA, about working the Glory fight the following Saturday on the 14th. I think it's on a Saturday. So I told him we'll talk tomorrow, and so on and so on, man. But
then on the 16th, you've got University of MMA here in LA, right?
And the 16th, I have the University of MMA in LA, and Charlotte's the one that says she only if I could take her shopping, and Jay buys me a nice steak dinner.
It's done.
All right.
It'll be your steak dinner that I end up giving to her, so you'll have to fend for yourself. But I will buy her a steak dinner.
Yes, sir. I'm looking forward to it, Jay.
Well, as we're it's just starting to open up here, we're talking, of course, in part about UFC on Fox 16 yesterday. TJ Dillashaw defending against Renan Barao. Running down the list here real quickly, of course, that was the main event. Dillashaw winning by TKO in the 4th round. Miesha Tate and Jessica Ai in the co-main event women's bantamweight fight for number one contendership, really. Miesha coming out on top with a unanimous decision, 30-27s across the board there. Lightweight, Edson Barboza and Paul Felder, the at that point undefeated Paul Felder, 10-0, now 10-1. That one ended up getting Fight of the Night honors. Edson Barboza coming out, unanimous decision. Joe Lozon, opening up the Fox card, Joe Lozon versus Takanori Gomi.
One of my favorites.
Takanori Gomi?
Joe Lozon.
Joe Lozon. Yeah. Well, it's all the more reason to now. I was going to say, if it was Gomi, then you can switch allegiances there.
But Gomi was the man. I mean, he still is the man in some ways, and a lot of guys still look up to him. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Gomi, he can still go. I just think Joe Lozon is so badass.
Well, Gomi is certainly a veteran that's been through, he's seen his fair share of wars, and I think we've probably seen his high point past him, probably in Pride.
Yeah.
I think.
I'm proud of being fans of like guys like Joe Lozon and Stephen Thompson, where you normally don't think of them as somebody's favorite. You always think of them maybe somebody who's a champion or somebody who's been around for a while. But I've always liked that kind of, I don't want to say underdog, but just kind of guys that don't really get to main event. Granted, Thompson was in the main event the last time he fought. Like
working man's fighters.
Yeah, it's little things that I just kind of notice that really make a difference between them and other people. They may not have the best record in some ways, especially Joe Lozon, who I think lost to Michael Johnson not too long ago. Mm-hmm. But still always puts on a show. Kind of guys like Chris Lytle as well.
Yeah, Chris was one of my early favorites.
Joe Lozon especially, I think he's got the record for most money gained from bonuses.
13.
He's probably made more money on bonuses than he has seriously than he's done on his fights. So
I agree.
But he's a true warrior. And you guys were talking about Gomi real quick. And when we did the fights in Japan, I'm wrapping his hands, and he says, "Stitch, about how many hands have you wrapped?" I said, "Well, Gomi, maybe 5,000, and you're 5,001." And so I got a smile off of him, So that was a great thing, and just a great relationship with these guys. Joe Lozon, I think he's everybody's, blue collar fighter. Mm-hmm. All there and give the fans everything that the fans pay for. So I always expect a fight from him. And I remember his first coming out party. I was working with Jens Pulver. And I'm thinking, okay, well, Jens Pulver's a legend. He's actually him and Dave Monet were the first two guys that I rapped when I first came into the UFC, and I was working his corner against Joe Lozon. And really that was, for me, was the first changing of the guards, where this evolution of these type of fighters are ready to leave, and the new ones, which are the Joe Lozons and the other ones, are coming in.
Yeah. Obviously, you've worked with pretty much everybody across the board. I think probably on this card here, at least certainly the Fox card, if not the undercard as well. You were working last night. I'm guessing you didn't have a chance to catch any of the fights or anything.
No, I sure didn't.
You've had a little bit of a week with the UFC, haven't you?
What's that?
A little bit of a week with the UFC, huh?
Yeah, pretty much.
Not the usual par for the course curriculum for the week, right?
Well, and it goes way back to July the 11th. Talk about a busy week with them, right? I did the McGregor and Mendes fight, and Sunday I did the Tough fight, and Wednesday I did the UFC in San Diego, and then I came back Thursday and I did the finales for the Tough Japan, and then Friday I did the eliminations for the new season 22, which was Conor McGregor and Uriah Faber, and then Tuesday I get some news that I'm no longer working with the UFC.
Yeah, that whole thing, I mean, I'm not sure quite where to start. A lot of the headlines have already have been out there. It's a little. We spoke a little bit offline. You were saying it's a little bit old news, and you're looking to move on. That said, I think it's an important story to kind of recap and hit some of the I think there's story in the details here. Broad strokes, and correct me if I'm wrong on any of this stuff. You did an interview with BloodyElbow.com. stating how the Reebok deal with the UFC affects you directly, in that cut men are no longer allowed to have their own sponsors on their jackets. They are required to wear the Reebok vest and are not getting compensated for it at all.
You're right on point.
And I know the link is out there. People can obviously go and read the article itself. There didn't seem to be any malicious or you weren't talking trash, as you typically don't, keeping a consummate professionalism. I think the worst thing that you said was, well, even going so far as to say that you didn't think that this was done out of malice, but simply you guys had simply been left kind of to the side in them preparing this deal. Fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. We were overlooked, no doubt about it, and it's something I had to bring up, Jay, because at that point on the July 11th one, I lost my sponsorship money, right?
Yeah.
So, and what I was getting paid from the UFC for these shows just didn't make it worthwhile for me to continue and stay. Even though I loved working with these guys, but I stayed in here. Even fights before, I gave up a lot of the major boxing events, shows because I was already committed to the UFC, and in fights like in Brazil where I had to have a visa, or Australia, and so I gave up some opportunities like that.
So you said what you said, kind of knowing the backlash part of it.
Well, listen, I found out about this a year ago, and it was December, I'll never forget, and I said, well, they're going to take our sponsorships away in January. That was kind of like the understanding that we as a cut man had a little bit, and then we realized that no, it's gonna be later on in June, and so throughout that whole period, we try to, we talked amongst ourselves, and we knew that we had to get something. How can you wear somebody's logo as a primary product and not get compensated for it? That market that's what you do. Yeah. And we were not being given that opportunity. So, we tried to schedule some meetings, and we went to the people that we report to, and the feedback was always when they came back that UFC didn't have no money set aside for us.
Do you think that it was specifically?
That's kind of a disrespectful thing. Mm-hmm. And so come when Bloody Elbow did the interview, I guess they were just at the right time, at the right place with the questions that were asked of me. I answered them as politically correct as possible, and I think the fans, the media like yourselves, Jay, you guys read into what happened. The fans started responding like, God, these guys just we didn't know. A lot of these guys never knew. So, it's not going to change me, but maybe, through this process, the cut men get recognized, number one, and then get compensated fairly. That's it. We didn't ask for much.
Yeah, it's in part two of the story, and then certainly the ramifications, I think, are a really fascinating part, in that there was such a huge backlash when the Bloody Elbow story came out that Twitter really blew up. There were so many fans. I think that there were so many fans taking your side, and the side of the cut men, saying it's not unrealistic to throw a bone to the cut men, give them a piece of the pie. You shouldn't not. And I personally understand that and agree with it. But it was such a huge backlash, I think seemingly probably unexpected, but it was like more fuel for the fire of a backlash against Reebok and this kind of failed or faltered at least debut of the Reebok sponsorship deal. A lot of people unhappy with the uniforms and things like that. The uniforms, the lack of pay compared to what they were getting before, etc. And now this kind of treatment to the cut men. Do you think that it was an intentional thing on behalf of the UFC? Like they actively, for whatever reason, justified or not, wanted to only focus on fighters and thinking that you guys would go along with it? Or is there any kind of idea of the rationale for this?
I'm so far beyond that now, Jay, but those are questions that you guys need to ask and need to be answered. And, let me ask you, because I'm a journalist also, is what do you think? Do you think that was something that was intended by the UFC? I haven't, the point is we're not getting compensated, and we've been told that there was no money in the pocket. So, everything I've gotten from point A to now, Jay, I've done it all on myself. I've never really been one to be kissing anybody's ass and all that. So a lot of things, the majority of the things I've created myself. So, when I get the no right off the bat, I'm not going to go over there and chase it. They know what our quality was. Well, they didn't know. The fighters knew. The fans were starting to react to when I had the one more round, Stitch is giving these fighters that one more round. So everybody in the industry knew except for the people that need to make a difference in keeping us. This is my full-time job. This is what I do. This is my career. 30 years of it, so I just had to protect myself. And I figure since I used to get the sponsors would come to me, and I would get the other cutmen, not all of the elite cutmen, the top 4 cutmen. I would get them sponsored, and I didn't have to do that, so I kind of became the guy that was the leader. Mm-hmm. And when it was time to do that article, and I knew that things weren't looking good with the UFC, with us, number one, wearing these very basic cornerman jackets. To me, it was an insult because, Mass designed the original vest, and I took pride in wearing them, when I was with Tap Out. And then when I left them, I went to One More Round, and through his knowledge and his artistic talents, I designed the ones from Therefore After. So I take pride in mine, and to be given a vest like that was just, not very professional.
Specifically, I think it's important that this gets out and established as well. You were told when you got the phone call from the UFC letting you go, they said specifically that it was because of the Bloody Elbow article. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Wow. All right. And it's was there any discussion at all that your words were not nearly as inflammatory as what fighters and many other people have said publicly? Even fighters themselves. Someone had told me that Brendan Schaub told people to not buy his own fighter kit.
Right. No, Jay, the 2 guys that called me are my friends. Everybody in the UFC organization were my friends. I guess maybe not Dana. He said I wasn't his friend, but everybody. And when you talk about friends, it's not about breaking bread all the time. There's the guys that call me. We've gone out for a beer as a team. We've done this. Those are friends. Those are what you consider friends. And they're the ones that had to be the bearers of the bad news and call me. And when I was being told, I could hear my friend's voice. He wasn't very comfortable saying it. And I wasn't going to backlash him and get question him and all that. Right. I figured it was already done. He's not the one doing it. He's a messenger. I'm not going to give him a hard time. But it's I knew who did it.
Yeah. Was it ultimately Dana's decision and no one else's?
Well, I don't know. I don't know. You got Lorenzo Fertitta there that's with the company. You have these other attorneys, and I don't know what their internal system is. But whoever decision it was, as they say, if you're a general in the military and you guys lose a battle, you're going to probably lose your position, right? So I didn't know who it was. It could have been anyone, but I don't know.
Of the Dana said in his interview yesterday after the fight, they have 10 cutmen under contract. Obviously, I presume independent contractor contracts. So guys that can rely, and I believe a girl as well who can rely on getting gigs on fight days. Of that, I'm curious. This is leading to a point. What percentage would you give in terms of their cut men and cut people staff? How many would you say are more of the older OG type that have the experience they can kind of what's the word, share with some of the younger ones? Because if I understand correctly, my opinion of this trickle down effect here is that you're no longer there. If that continues, if there is a trend, there's at least one more spot now open. There are younger cut people coming up and working with the UFC, but you still need the OGs like you. You still need the experienced ones who have seen really bad cuts and can close things up to a point that a match can continue. This is what I think the casual fans don't realize is the effect of not having experienced cut people that are able to do what they do for the matches continue. Otherwise, if the cut is not able to be closed, a match will potentially end much earlier, and fans don't get to see what they want to see, and et cetera, et cetera. The matches end earlier, and it affects people's paychecks certainly as well, the fighters particularly. So to that end, your thoughts on the group, the staff that they have, and I'm not asking you to talk about good or bad, but I want to get some opinion on what you think is going to result of this and how the UFC cut staff fares going forward.
Yeah, God, very good questions. I hope my memory remembers every one of those questions you asked me, but we'll try to answer them for you.
It was
right?
a long way around a single question, really. I apologize for the
What do you think
tour.
of the cut, man? Huh? But I tell you what, let's get back to square one. Do we have a little bit of time for this, Jay?
Absolutely.
I want to take you back to square one when Dana brought me on board. Then it was only UFC from UFC number one. It was the legendary Leon Tabbs, right? And then I came on board, and Burt Watson was the coordinator, and at that point we structured the program for Leon and myself. What we're gonna do? We're gonna wrap hands. We're gonna work cuts. Burt guided us and all that, and then it got so busy, everybody wanted us to wrap their hands that we brought in Don House, and Don House used to train Tito Ortiz and Chuck Liddell for Dana. So we brought him in as to wrapping hands, and Leon and I would wrap hands and work the fights, and then it got so busy that we had Rudy Hernandez came on board, and then Rob Monroe that used to work for Bellator now, we brought him on board, and then from the Strikeforce team you had Ted Lucio and Huitzi Mata. And Huitzi Mata, I got a text that somebody had referred to Huitzi as Machete, so he was the Machete of the UFC, right? And
he looks like Machete?
Machete, yeah.
He looks like that. So you're covering Carlo?
Absolutely, yeah. No, he's native from Mexico, and he's very proud of his heritage, and his features definitely represent that. But he's the one that was. I saw a picture. He was working on one of the fighters last night. But these are the core seven. These are the guys that really established the UFC, and we were running it for the longest time, and it was running like a machine, as smooth as you could get. And then
How far
the
back was that?
UFC wanted to expand, so they started bringing in additional cutmen, and they did it without our approval. And they're bringing in guys that have a little bit of experience because they wanted to work in the UFC, and those are things I was against. Stuff I spoke out about it, but I have no control over that.
Yeah.
Even offered. I went to the UFC office and I offered to help guide these guys and put them in situations where I test them and see if they're qualified to go and work a fight at this level. And I was turned down on that. So at that point, everything started unraveling for the cut man. It's just like our respect was going further and further away. And so at that point, I just kind of slowed down, and I figured, what, I'm going to work, just think about myself. I had my Stitch Premium tape that I was using there for about 3 months, and then we're in Brazil, and I kind of get yelled at for using it, and I'm kind of flabbergasted, and so I meet with the UFC people after that, and basically they wanted to charge me the same fees that they charge these other companies to sponsor, the shirts or whatever. And I thought, wow, that's I've been here since UFC 33.
Yeah.
And the tape that I had was I designed it differently. It's a lot more glue. It's easy to rip. It's ideal for wrapping hands. I had tape that's 1.5 inch, 1 inch, and a 1/2 inch that goes between the fingers. So that's an improvement of the game. And they wouldn't let me use that. And wow, next thing you know, the UFC has their own tape. So, but
Did you use that tape at all? Did you test it out?
Well, no, that's that's the thing that's really a bummer, right? Because I created this tape, and when the UFC did, they went to 2 of the youngest guys in the business. One of them, I take that back, is younger, but he's been through he's done so much work, and he was my student, and he did a tremendous job. But nonetheless, they went to him, those 2 young guys, about advice on the gauze and what have you not, and
they went to the young grasshoppers and not the OGs.
Yeah, exactly. So at that point, you just kind of see the writing on the wall. And I worked for R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company for like 23 years, and it was the same corporate structure. So I knew what was happening, but for the love of the game, for the love of the fighters, the being there with the fans, this is really what made this whole adventure for me worthwhile. It was never really, I always went. I mean, listen, they gave me 5 guys in one night to wrap. I did 8 or 9 because it was tough for me to say no. So I went way beyond the Call of Duty, and like I say, and then to get canned the way I did, just it's not what I expected. It wasn't the manly thing to do.
Right, of course.
Real quick, going back to square one, how do you learn how to do these things that you do, and where do the guys that they do hire, where do they come from?
That's a good question. And I just left Beirut Shumanov's. We had a little celebration victory party for him, and one of his friends is a doctor and his wife is a nurse, and they asked the same question that I get asked all this time is, what does it take to be a cut man? And really, to be good at what you do, I tell them you got to spend hours and days and weeks and months and years in the gym learning how to be a fighter and working with the fighters and learning your trade as you go. And if you do it for the money, you do it for the wrong reasons. So the 7 core guys that I spoke about, we have over 150 years experience, easy. Me with 30, Don House with mid 30, Rita Hernandez with maybe 30, 35, Rob Monroe, Ted Lucio, Weezy. These guys, actually, if you figure 25, 30 years each, let's say 25, that's 150 years experience for sure. The ones in the background, if you take, and there's a Scott Robb or a Reem from Boston that does a great job. He's a boxing guy, but we come from the sport of combat and not just walking in, and people think because they're doctors or paramedics or EMTs or nurses that they could be cutmen. But it takes a lot more than that. It's the application of wrapping hands, working cuts, but also the psychological part of it. And the only way you're going to learn that, Jay, is to be in the gym with these fighters and get hit like these fighters and know what it feels like. And there's some in some of the cutmen in the UFC that have not experienced that. And my concern is as it goes further and they work more fights, you might see some fighters being at a big disadvantage because of the cut man or cut person that they have working with them.
Mm-hmm. A big part of it sounds like it's really a key to learning it is to throw yourself into it. I'm guessing trial and error of wrapping hands and asking fighters their feedback on it, and just the more experience, the more you get better at it in applying this tape and gauze to another person's fists. It's
an art, brother, and it's just you just can't do it, and
right.
because you want to be in the limelight, you want to have TV fights, and I could do this and I could do that. That's not the way the system is designed, and so in that aspect, you got to go in there and you got to pay your dues, and it pays off in the long run, but fighter safety, man, that's my number one concern, and it's funny, Dana was talking about 10 cutmen, and I started laughing because, show you how much he knows about what we do. Actually, there's in the United States, there's 13 cutmen. In Europe, which basically out of England and Ireland, there's 5 more that we hired. And because we're expanding, or the UFC is expanding, mm-hmm. So they're using these cutmen. And the ones in England are very good. You're right, they're boxing people. Mm-hmm. In Brazil, there's 2 of them. In England, there's one that's a Muay Thai martial arts fighter. So, we have a accumulation of good cutmen that they're expanding, but then there's some that need some work.
What do you think it is that they right place at the right time that they were signed by the UFC, or what is it? What is their method in terms of how they select or their criteria for bringing on new cut people?
Well, that I'm not privileged to.
Yeah.
The only thing they tell us is we got a new cut person.
Yeah.
So if you were running a good industry, let me ask you that. In basic business, they know that if you want to be the best, you hire the best to do what they do in their category, right? UFC hired these guys out of the NFL for the advertising. They hired the best of the best to build up their company. And
you're talking about their execs, you mean the executive team, right?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. But on the mechanical side is we had the best team, but now we're being diluted a little bit, and I hope that that doesn't affect the fighters, and it affects the fans too because they don't get that one more round.
Yeah. Can you give us a good example of matches in the past? Maybe some of the cuts that you're more proud of, or matches where you were able to kind of save the day, and we got the match to continue another round or two.
Oh, sure. Well, let's, how about the one with Robbie Lawler and Rory McDonald?
How about that one?
yeah. Mike Afanasiev worked the blue corner throughout the final 5, I think, pay-per-view fights, and he was the young cut man, but had the ring's generalship. He boxed and he wrestled, but on the mechanical side, he came and he did a tremendous job, and him and I worked the final 4 together, and he had Rory McDonald and I had Robbie Lawler, and we gave the fans probably the greatest fight in MMA history, and I gave Robbie a victory. I helped him get his victory, and Mike Afanasiev kept Rory McDonald in the game as much as he could. So if the fans noticed it, I saw Robbie the next day because we did the tough. I'm in the back getting ready to walk out for the next fight, and he shows me his cut, and then he gives me a hug and says, "Thanks, man. That was a hell of a job you did. I didn't realize how big it was till I saw it." So Forrest Griffin from the day one, what would have happened if that fight wouldn't have gone the distance, and Spike wouldn't have liked it, and
You're talking about Forrest Griffin and Stephan Bonnar, the first one.
Stephan Bonnar, yes, exactly. I was there. I was a big part of it. As a matter of fact, one of Forrest's corner guys, I'm standing there, and he looks at me. He said, "You know what, Stitch? I'm not gay, but I got to give you a kiss, man, because you did a great job in keeping Forrest in the game." So you look at those moments when Forrest Griffin again was Shogun. When he, the first Pride fighter to fight a UFC fighter, ended up with a big old cut, and I kept him in the game. And I'm sure as we sit down, there's handfuls of other ones that I did. But I think if you ask the fighters, Jay, what does it mean for Stitch to be in your corner, and what does that do to you as a fighter? I remember Frank Trigg said, when Stitch walks into the dressing room, my stomach just drops because I know it's time to fight. We're definitely an important part of the game, of the mix, and people just didn't notice that.
Yeah. What, George?
I can't read what you're
the magic of the internet here. I'm passing a note.
I mean, I'm kind of curious too, just being as experienced as you've been. Obviously, you've been all over the world. Anything that sticks out to our fellow travelers who watch and listen to AfterBuzz that, wow, if that guy's been all over the world and he says that so and so is the best meal or the best country you've been to, any cool memories as far as that goes?
Oh, come on, man! I got tons of memories.
Oh, go ahead and name them all. Name them all.
Like people ask me about fighters. Look, man, if you pick a fighter, I'll probably tell you a pretty good story that I've had in relationship with him. Like Gomi, 5001. And but I think my first visit to Brazil, Rio de Janeiro, for the Brazilian fight, I knew I was going to enjoy Brazil because I'm going through customs, and as soon as I get to the custom agent, he tells me, "Stitch, bom-vindo a Brazil, obrigado." And man, he stamped my thing, and I went through, and I'm thinking, I like this, and then to get stopped in the streets of Rio de Janeiro by the police, and they point at me, and then they do this, and so I had that type of recognition, and so that was tremendous, and I think that's when Jose Aldo fought, and it was actually, and then he won, and that's when he runs into the audience. So
against Chad Mendes.
But I've had tons of those. When I was in Japan, we came back went back to Japan after so many years off, and I'm working the first fights. So I'm walking from the dressing rooms into the arena, down the hall, and you hear people in the audience, Stitch-san, Stitch-san. And here I am walking with my buckets, and I got chills, so there's tons and tons and tons of memories.
Is there anywhere out there that you've been wanting to go to that you knew that maybe was going to at some point get there?
Well, yeah, Madison Square Garden. That was Rio de Janeiro. I never thought I'd be in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. First time I'm there, I wrapped these couple guys that are royalty from the royal family. I wrapped their hands, and they're just so ecstatic because Anderson Silva is signing them, and I'm giving them cast, and they invite me to a party that was just like tremendous, out of this world, and the prince is telling the guys, I gotta go, but this is Stitch. You make sure you take care of them. Tons of moments, man. I've had a great career and a great life.
Real quickly, I ran down the list of results for the main card last night. Anybody that stood out in your mind, anybody you're particularly close with, have stories? Dillashaw, Barao, Miesha Tate, Jessica Ai, Edson Barboza?
Yeah, well, let's start off with TJ. I've gotten all the alpha male guys. I rap them because I guess I had my school of kickboxing in Fairfield, which was close to the Sacramento area. Plus, I like the guys, right? Mm-hmm. Dan Castillo, and these are the guys that I've always had a nice bond with. That when they would ask Bert if Stitch could wrap their hands, whether they were on my list or not, I would wrap their hands anyway. But TJ, I wrapped his hands for the first Barao fight, and I took a picture with him, and I told him, I want to be the first one to take a picture with a new champ, and that became quite special. But it's great moments with all these guys. And Miesha Tate, obviously, I worked with her during the reality show when she fought Ronda. But same thing, I know Brian came in one time and says, Miesha's not on your list, but can you wrap her hands? Because when you wrap her hands, her confidence level goes up so high. If you could do that, I would appreciate it. And I did, and I'm glad I did. And, those are the little moments that we do. Those aren't the ones that, I'm looking at getting paid for and all that. I do it because I enjoy the game. But there's tons of stories. Lyoto Machida just sent me a text night before last that he had just found out what had happened. And it was a very, very heartfelt text. But when he beat Rashad Evans, I walked into the dressing room to congratulate him. And, his father's such a proud man with his kimono and just sitting there very, chest out, back straight. Mm-hmm. Just very proud of his son. He's just won a world title, right? So I go in there and I congratulate Lyoto, and in front of his father, he says, "Stitch, in the ring, you are my father." And that, I tell you, in front of his father, wow. I'm looking at the shit. I hope you don't kick the shit out of me. but that's a respect factor, right? And every time I see his father and Lyoto and the whole family, they all show me a whole lot of respect. And Vitor, Vitor just called the other day, and Belfort Vitor Belfort was heartbroken. Stitch, he says, when I fight, I'm going to bring you in as my cut man. So.
Are they going to be allowed to do that?
Now we got to determine whether UFC is going to let me work those fights like that.
Yeah, I was wondering. Obviously, I don't think I quite stuck with me until recently how one of the big differences in the way the boxing and MMA is set up is that the promotions in MMA typically will hire cut men to work all the fighters. Certainly, we do that with the U of MMA. But whereas boxing is much more individualized in that respect, in that boxers are hiring cut men directly, and they're essentially another part of their own corner that they bring along. I mean, you could literally have as many different cut men on a single night as you got fighters on that night, correct?
Oh, no, absolutely. Each team, will bring in the cut man, and like I'll go to Germany, work with Vladimir Klitschko. I'll work with 2 or 3 of their fighters from their stable. But yeah, normally every team is responsible for their own cut man, and not like the UFC. And and it was surprising that the media didn't pick up on it, and that nothing was really said. But that was one of Dana's first ingenious things to do in making the UFC as safe as it could, is to bring in professional cut men to help these fighters, because MMA was such a new sport. 14, 15 years ago, whenever we started, that these guys didn't know how to wrap hands, and they definitely didn't know how to work cuts. So Dana brought me in to help Leon Tabs so we could start keeping these guys as safe as possible. I thought it was very ingenious, but nobody ever really brought that up or even noticed. So maybe at that point I should have figured out that there's going to be a little bit of an issue with the cut man. But at that point, it was not even a problem.
Yeah. Now that you're, I saw an announcement recently that you're going to be working the World Series of Fighting next week. You're kind of going out on your own here. Did you get your sponsors back?
Yeah, Chris Stephan gave me this. Yeah, no, you know what? Let me start off with the sponsors, and then let me finish up with the WSOF. Well, number one, Ray Stephan was the first guy to call me, right? Mm-hmm. And he said, "Stitch, we have a show August the 1st. If you can make it, I would love it. If not, I understand." Very simple, right? And but even with Bad Boy, Wednesday when I did the fights in San Diego, I met with them in their office, and basically we were parting ways, right? And because his understanding at that point in mind was I was still going to stay with the UFC, and we were going to try to figure out something. But that didn't happen. So Robin called me the day I got fired. And he says, Stitch, I got something for you. He goes, what if, since your vest is a very iconic vest, everybody always associates that vest with you. What if we make T-shirts that represent your vest, that look like your vest, and we sell them, and you keep all the proceeds for 6 months? And it just kind of blew me away. And he says, also, what if we get all your Stitch Premium products, we discount them, we sell them, and for the next 6 months, you get all the proceeds. That was a tremendous feeling, to get that kind of support from Robin. So getting to that point, Charlotte and I thought about it throughout the night, and I think it was like 11:37 at night. I sent Ray a text and my wife saying, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm telling Ray that I'm going to be working a show on the 1st of August, right? But the storyline to that, Jay and George, is, when Ray first had his first show with the WSOF, Ray's a good friend of mine. He had called me, as he should have, and asked if I could bring in cutmen and do the same thing that we do, like we did in the UFC, the program that me and Don House and Leon established. So without a doubt, I did that. And the next thing I know is we're not working the next 5 fights. And bottom line is we're told that, we're independent contractors and fight on a fight-by-fight basis, and that we gave these guys credibility and take it from there. So anyway, I had to tell Ray I couldn't do it. As soon as I got released, and I accepted his offer. So I'm going to go over there and support him and make it the best show that you can.
And continue on with boxing as well, right? You've got Andre Ward, you've got the Klitschko's, of course.
Yeah, right, exactly, absolutely. And with all the calls that I've been getting, you talk about sponsors. There's calls that are coming in, and Charlotte and Homie and Carla, we're all here, and Daniel's here, and everything has been kind of overwhelming. I'm getting all these things, so we're jotting down numbers and taking names, and I told them, let's talk next week. So there's going to be some things that are going to be happening. One thing I got to thank Dana for is that thank you for kickstarting my new career, because couldn't have done it without him, brother.
Yeah, you could say that again. Well, cool. Very good, sir. Gotta let you go here. We're going to be wrapping up pretty soon, but wanted to thank you, of course, for the time. Always certainly a pleasure seeing you in Vegas and whereabouts, and hopefully we'll catch you here in LA in a couple of weeks there.
Yes, thank you. One last question. How often do people think you're Edward James Olmos?
Well, I guess we look alike, man, number one. But just let me add also, one of the things that I'll be doing is I'm doing a movie with Edward James Olmos and Anderson Silva, September the 25th. And it's an MMA movie where the director is actually going to be in a real fight. Oh, nice. And this fight is going to take place at Bellator in Los Angeles.
Interesting.
And, talk about things working in mysterious ways. You're asking George about Edward James Olmos, which he's one of my big idols, and I look up to him. I'm going to be working with him, and obviously the legend, the Spider, that I've worked with many a times. I'll be working with them, so that's something I'm looking forward to, and maybe we could talk about that later down the road. Absolutely, you're welcome back anytime and every time. You know that. I know that, and I'm giving you the same key you're giving me. It's, I got your back, man, and thanks for having my back. And let me just add, with this WSOF that I'm doing Saturday, Friday, Ray Seffel and the team asked if I would be willing to do an autograph signing with the champs that are going to be there at the Fight Shop in Planet Hollywood. And it took me like a split second to say, of course. And Bad Boy sent them some of our promo shots, and they already got the cards made up and everything. So, all these fans go and support Ray Seffel and the World Series of Fighting, and then come by Planet Hollywood up at the Fight Shop from 1 to 3. And, want to look forward to giving you guys some signed autographs, and you get to meet some of the fighters. So come on down. So that's awesome. 1 to 3 on Saturday the 1st. On Friday. Yeah, right before the weigh-ins, actually.
All right, so the 31st of July at the Fight Shop in Planet Hollywood Casino in Las Vegas, right?
Yes, if you could pass the word, that'd be awesome.
We just did. There you go.
Continuous. I only do on one show, brother.
All right, then. Very good. Stitch Duran, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate the time.
Such a pleasure.
My pleasure, guys. Thanks.
All right, take care there.
All right, we got like a minute and a half to cover like so many things.
Yeah, so a lot happened last night. There were some fights that happened.
Yeah, let's just skip to the main event. And mostly, I just did want to kind of cover it just because it was a championship fight. A lot of people,
Certainly.
I don't want to, obviously, such important figure that we had on the show.
We've got guys blowing it up here in the chat room.
Doesn't take away from the fact that championship rematch, Barao Dillashaw. What a fight. And I've been saying this for years, or not years, but since Dillashaw last one, is that he just has his number, man.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think anything taken away from Barao. Just some guys just have your number, and Dillashaw has Barao's number. And we saw it yesterday, fifth round, the first time around, fifth round finish. This time a fourth round finish.
Right.
Pretty much a lot of the same.
And there wasn't. I mean, it was close. The first round I thought was really close.
I think Barao it was a lot closer this time around than the last time. But either way,
I was giving TJ certainly the second, third. Didn't need to give him the fourth.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts about Herb Dean? That stoppage went a little bit long there.
I counted the second time around, and maybe like 10 seconds too long.
10 seconds?
Yeah.
That's a long time in general because those punches go fast.
Exactly. So I think 10 seconds, and then from the fight that I thought should have been stopped, and then it actually getting stopped. So
yeah, that was a little bit disconcerting. It was a strange night for the officiating there. I remember Eve Levine also had a strange moment in the earlier one. Was it and Herb, actually the Takanori Gomi one as well.
Yeah, that was a strange finish. That was more Lozon though, and like just kind of getting up and not allowing the ref to.
Yeah, Lozon throwing punches from bottom, flattening out Gomi early in the first, and then just getting up and walking off Gomi before Herb Dean touches either fighter or waves off the match. And then Herb Dean finally does wave off the match.
Another person I thought was impression is going to segue into real quick wrapping it up is Miesha Tate looked amazing. I thought, she improved her striking, which says a lot because she was already pretty good as well, which leads us into next week because now it looks like she's fighting the winner of Ronda Rousey versus Bethe Correia. Real quick predictions. I will never again in my life count out Ronda Rousey. Just kind of curious on how she's going to win.
I'll count her out from coming on the show. I think we can count her out on that one.
I'm sure something can still be worked out. But either way, Ronda Rousey. With that said, she is pretty much the division, the girl, the woman of. I mean, just a week ago, she won not best women's athlete. She won best. No, I'm sorry, not best women's fighter, but best women's athlete.
I don't think there's a best women's fighter. There's best fighter, I believe. I think she got best fighter and best female athlete.
What did I say? Oh yeah, best women's fighter. Yeah, so she got best fighter and then best women's athlete, which says a lot because she beat girls over
Serena Williams,
Lindsey Vonn, Serena Williams, and that says a lot and shows you just how impactful that somebody like Ronda Rousey is. Now I think it's kind of cool. Now she's going into Brazil, and it's funny because thinking back, she's kind of been fighting on a lot of California cards. I think the last one was in LA. The one before that, I think, might
February. Before that was I don't remember offhand. It
might have been either Vegas, so kind of close by. So I'm kind of curious. Just not that I think it's going to affect her. I think Ronda Rousey's a machine, no matter where she fights.
Yeah.
But it's kind of an extra dynamic going into your opponent. Not only the opponent, but the challengers. Not the champion, but the challenger's home turf. We don't really see that too often.
Yeah. Well, she has competed in judo competitions in Brazil. She says that she's familiar with that area and likes it a lot. Joe Boza said, "I'm calling you out, bro." He says Ronda is scared of Bethe because Bethe has destroyed her way through the Four Horsewomen.
I mean,
no, dude.
Okay,
come on, man.
So I was thinking about that too, and I feel, God, I hope I don't get beat up for this because obviously we've heard stories about them beating up people. But dude, like, I don't know what it is. Maybe just Ronda's that good. But even Jessamine Duke, like, has she won a fight since she even came in?
The Horsewomen
had Marina just fought and Invicta and she lost.
The Horsewomen, I believe, have gone 0-6 or 0-7 since this gimmick started. Of course, I mean, I'm going to my notes here. Jess lost by 29-28. So she did get that last round. But Elizabeth Phillips had her number there. was landing flurries, and Jess just wasn't getting off as we typically do with her striking and stuff. Man, what do you think? Should we talk about another Reebok moment with that, or a Reebok point with that match?
Go ahead.
You didn't get to see it.
No.
Have you seen it on the internet?
No. Sorry.
One of the things that I was talking to somebody.
You made me look bad.
No, it's fine. A non-fan was. We were talking last night. One of the things in the Reebok rollout, they talked about the quality of the wear and how it is so well designed for athletes. And last night during that match, Jessamine Duke and Elizabeth Phillips, at the end of the third round, we had our very first ever, that I know of, nip slip.
Oh, really?
Yep.
From who?
Elizabeth Phillips was on the ground. The match ended with Duke in an armbar, or having Elizabeth Phillips in an armbar, and when the match ended, you got up, and it had rolled up there a little bit, which ironic because at the rollout you had Ronda talking about how she was always concerned in the past, like there wasn't proper fight attire for women. She would work with yoga sports bras or yoga tops or whatever, and how this the Reebok stuff was so great and comfortable and did the job. Well, not so much so that one time.
Yeah.
Oops.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about Tate versus Rousey a third time? How do you hype that one? How do you build
marketability? I think it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
It's one of those double-edged swords, because I think if Betch wins, I think that's bad in terms of Ronda is just such a machine and such a beast, and she's been built that way. Not just because of the marketing, but it's just the way she is. It's not really hard to market somebody who is like that in real life. In the fight mode, of course, she's not. Obviously, seeing her on appearances and in the media, she comes across as very genuine and shy at times. But as far as from the fighting stance, is you have Ronda being this person, but then Betch not really. She just kind of came out of nowhere, and she hasn't had the time that they've put in her. So seeing her against Tate, I think it'd be not really good as far it wouldn't main event a pay-per-view. It wouldn't headline a pay-per-view.
Do you think that Misha versus Ronda 3?
But with that said, it's kind of hard to market that as well, especially because it wasn't exactly a back and forth battle both times. It's very one-sided and ended very much so the same each time, except different rounds.
I think the only thing you can do, the only angle really is, well, two, one of which I don't think that they will take is to how do you say, go back to the playground tactics, talk the trash, just poke the bull, as it were.
Because you can't do an Ultimate Fighter again, obviously, because they already did that.
Yeah.
It's just one of those, I'm kind of curious how they're going to play it out. It's like, well, she's going to fight the girl who took her to this third round,
Yeah.
Oh,
I think that's
an unthinkable.
And the other thing is maybe is Misha saying, I've reinvented my game. Yeah. I'm a different fighter, which I think we heard that last time too.
Exactly.
What would you prefer?
I prefer Rousey Tate again.
Yeah.
I'd prefer
as opposed
that.
to Tate Correa.
And it's just not in terms of fight wise. I just think of marketability. I'm thinking if I was a promoter, but also as a fan, something to look forward to.
Yeah.
And Tate and Rousey would be both.
Yeah.
Just because, mostly because of Rousey from a promoter standpoint, I'd never want to see anyone else in that role unless it's maybe Cyborg. And even I was thinking about it too, and even Cyborg, where even if she goes down to 135, it's not like she's gonna stay at 135. You know what I mean?
Well, she will say that she will.
Yeah.
In that leading up to that fight, in that she will say, I'm going to win the 135 belt, then I'm going to defend it, and this is my new home.
But I don't see her staying there. I'd see her, obviously, with so much trouble, so she says, and I believe her, getting to that weight, who's to say that, it's not always going to be like that. She's going to make it that one time, and then who knows what she's going to say, make all these other excuses, legitimate or maybe illegitimate. Who knows?
So, what if it comes to Ronda versus Cyborg at 135, Cyborg wins it, and then she vacates the belt? Boom!
I know. That's the thing. That's the thing. It's like I do think that she's the only person that would give Ronda a fair fight, not a fair fight, but just a good
run
fight
for her money.
Yeah, and I just don't see Cyborg staying at 135, and there'd be no choice but for her to vacate the belt. But that again, if that happens, that won't be until at least 2016.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I know the last Cyborg fight was pretty quick. I'm sure have they announced something for her?
Don't, not that I know of. No, it was of course over July. It was Fight Week.
Yeah.
The Invictus
But yeah,
show.
I'm actually very much so, and I know. I don't think we mentioned her. Our very own Daria Baronato. I know she's who. Yeah. I know she's looking for that. Looking forward to next week. I don't know if we have time for AfterBuzz predictions.
Cue that soundbite, monkey. Oh,
It's someone else. Okay.
And now,
Good
your
call, Mark. Mark's
AfterBuzz
the man.
TV prediction.
no, Dad took over.
Oh really?
Yeah,
Oh, that's not Mark.
I believe.
I know there's a few fights I'm looking forward to. It's not too often that we see the Nogueira brothers fight on the same card, and this is one of them. I believe Big Nog is fighting Stefan Struve. I know Struve is coming off a loss against. Look at no notes. I don't need who needs notes. Struve is coming off. Me and you, Ariel Helwani. The challenge is on. Actually, I do think he'd win.
That's the trivia challenge, right?
No, because I was watching you guys when he was on, and he's sitting there naming all the numbers, like, oh, well,
Right.
UFC 123. Like, I know things like that, but I can't name the numbers.
Right.
Like, there's just too many. If there was, like, a name to it, like UFC 182 Invincible or something like that, I'd be a lot better about it, but I can't do numbers. I know.
It's his job. That's
Yeah, I
what
know
he's supposed to
I know
do.
100. I know 101. That's about it. I know
There you
190 and 189 because it just happened.
Yes, obviously.
But yeah, with that said, Big Nog versus Stefan Struve. Big Nog hasn't fought in a while, though. I feel like he kind of maybe toward the tail end of his career, even with his twin brother as well. But same thing with Stefan Struve coming off a big injury, a health issue.
Big Nog's last fight was, in fact, a loss against Roy Nelson.
That was earlier this year, actually.
2014.
That was earlier last year, actually.
Yeah. He's on looks like a 2-fight losing streak right now.
I never like these fights in terms of I think the winner doesn't have that much to gain, and I think the loser has more to lose because of, is Stefan Struve, did the health issues bother him that much to the point where now if he loses again, is he done? If he wins again, well, he's still not going to compete at that top level,
Right,
because of we've seen him fight the top level guys. Now you got Big Nog is if he loses, well, should he retire? Or if he wins, well, he's obviously not going to be at that top level again because we've seen him.
That would be 3 in a row for Big Nog there.
Exactly.
Delano Lopez versus Reginaldo Vieira, I'm guessing in his pronunciation. What do you think of that one, man?
I think it's going to be a good fight.
There you go. I think there's going to be 2 people, a lot of punches, a lot of kicks. Fernando Bruno and Giaco Franco Mohea.
Ditto.
Right?
Ditto about the last fight.
Co-main
but the
event.
next fight, I don't want to say I'm looking that much forward to it, but just based on I don't know if it's on the actual Fight Pass. I know not everything. Is everything in Pride on Fight Pass?
Everything. I believe the Pride, most all of the Pride collection. I want to say all.
Because if that's the case, then this is a rematch of a previous Pride fight, in which I thought was one of the best fights I've ever seen at that time. Maybe looking at the whole landscape, maybe top 10 fights of all time.
Wow.
Obviously, I remember at that time thinking top 5, but obviously we've seen so many good fights since.
Sure.
Since what is it? 05 since the last fought. Mauricio Shogun Hua against Antonio Little Nog, or which one is Minotauro? Aren't they both Minotauros for some reason?
No. There's Minotauro and Minotauro. Minotauro is Big Nog because he has the extra letter. Little Nog is Minotauro.
Okay, so either way, Little
smaller
Nog,
name,
Little Nog versus Shogun.
Guy. Yeah.
But again, going back to their Pride fight, and this was the one where Shogun, I think, won the tournament, wasn't he?
That was Critical Countdown
05,
2005, right? June 2005. Yeah,
over 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think the Critical Countdown was middle of the show because it's final.
No. It wasn't the finals. I know that for sure. It was like the
tournament.
semifinals.
Yeah.
I know that. I know for a fact. It was not the finals. I know that for sure. But I remember watching. I'm thinking this fight is amazing. Again, fast forward. I've seen Shogun versus Dan Henderson, and that to me was one of the top 3
Shogun
fights of all time.
and Dan Henderson again.
Yeah, but no, I mean I think very few fights can compare to that first Henderson Shogun fight.
Oh, absolutely
my
agreed.
God.
Yeah, slobber knocker to be sure. So that's the co-main event is Shogun and Little Nog.
And of course Rousey and Correa. Do you think Rousey's going to win?
Yes. I don't even have a joke for that.
By how much?
I feel badly. That sounds a bit too
By how
submissive.
much?
It's a good question. That was the question I was going to ask you. Is this going to be another fast stoppage, or as Ronda says, is this going to be a punishment for a little while?
I'm going to go with what Ronda says because I mean whatever she says goes. Obviously, whatever she says goes in that cage.
Right.
So
what she wants to do, she does.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. I've never seen her not being able to do anything. Maybe the exception of not finishing Tate a lot sooner in that fight. But I mean, if she says she's going to punish her for a round and then make her submit in round 2, then I believe it.
Do you think it's possible that she gets her in armbar position and then lets go and gets up and keeps striking?
I think she's going to find a way to punish other body parts. So she'll get in that position, but she knows what else to do to kind of not go there. And she knows that, well, now I know I'm going to do it again.
Right.
But, I know how to do it. Well, now that she doesn't know how to do it.
I wonder if we're going to see a new, improved clinch game.
I don't know, dude. I mean,
my opinion is kind of the train of thought is when you're training, do work on the stuff that you're not known for, the stuff that people think you're never going to pull out. And we haven't really seen clinch game per se from her full striking.
We always see something new, unless it's like a 15-second fight. But even then, we see something new, Like even when she fought Sarah McMahon, it's like, her getting her and just kind of like a headlock, like you did in elementary school. And even with Kat Zingano, it's like, wow, that's an interesting submission move. So yeah, it is always something new. Yeah. With that said, I really do think Ronda Rousey's one of the best fighters of all time. Maybe even, if you really think about it in the bigger picture, maybe even the best female fighter of all time.
Oh, almost. Absolutely. Yeah, best female fighter. Top 10 for, maybe top 5 for best, certainly top 5 for best fighter right now, pound for pound. I'm going top 3. I mean, I feel it's hard to argue that. She's in the way that she's blown out the divisions, much as she has. Top 10 all time. Maybe. Yeah, I'll say that.
Just the way
certainly for MMA.
And I always say this all the time. It's just so much more than training camp. That's why I get a little annoyed whenever I hear the argument of like especially the Mendez McGregor that just happened 2 weeks ago. It's like, oh, if Mendez had a full training camp, it'd be a different story. Well, what about if McGregor had a full camp? I'm not so much buying into the whole training camp because you can't teach that factor that Ronda Rousey has because she trains with the other four horsewomen, or the other 3, I suppose. And how are they doing? Nothing against them, but it just shows that certain thing that you can't teach that Ronda Rousey has. And I think that's what separates her from everyone else in the entire world as far as not only a female fighter, but fighter in general.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's fun being here, as adults, not so much growing up and kind of, because when I was a kid when Mike Tyson was a big deal and I didn't really understand, exactly
I see where you're going.
What I mean?
Okay, yeah,
but being here in my age and our age and seeing Ronda Rousey and having all this access to see her in her absolute best, like,
and being able to process and understand what a phenomenon we're seeing.
It really is like a blessing. I mean, and I can only imagine.
You can't predict these kind of things. Another generation might not necessarily have a Mike Tyson or a Ronda Rousey.
Exactly.
But they will have great fighters. There's people to get behind.
Is there anyone, I think maybe aside from Conor McGregor, is there anyone you see that maybe can fit that role? Of just somebody
before last night, I would have said Paul Felder. No, just kidding.
I mean, just having that factor that you just can't teach at a gym, that you just can't, give to. You just got to have it.
There's a lot of guys having great moments on the rise now. I think of Makwan Amirkhani has a lot. I don't know if it's the right criteria. I mean, don't know his background nearly as well enough, but I believe he's undefeated right now. Possibly we will see his rise. Henry Cejudo, I think, has a really bright future. But are those guys next generation guys, or are they on the rise now? We could argue that point far longer than we have studio time for.
We're wrapping up soon. But that's the best part about MMA is there's no wrong answer as far as you have your Ronda and your Conor that just kind of right off the bat, they just kind of went full speed ahead. But then you have your Henry Cejudo's where he's not exactly destroying people, but that doesn't take away at all from his world-class athleticism and his fighting ability. So that's the great thing about MMA. There's so much, a little bit of everything. And then you put them all together, and guess what? Mixed martial arts.
Yeah. Demetrius Johnson's in that mix as well. Not just for the pound-for-pound conversation, but finishing when he wants to finish, that kind of thing. I think we'll what we expect to see from Ronda in deciding when the match finishes next week is what I think we do see with Demetrius Johnson.
That's what I like about guys like TJ and Demetrius is that even though they may be winning on the cards, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're gonna not try to finish. As complete, we've seen with Demetrius Johnson's last fight, 459 into the fifth round. I mean, that just goes to show you, you're not gonna coast no matter how far ahead are you in the scorecard. So kudos to all you guys. It's turned out like a positive show.
Sometimes we have that. Maybe because of the lack of who.
Hey, we love you.
Guys, that is it. We're going to wrap up here. Thanks once again to Stitch Duran for coming on. George, where are they finding you on the internet?
You can find me at G Hermoza. Not on Ashley Madison, but at G Hermoza. GHERMOZA on Twitter and on Instagram. What about you, Jay?
JTan716 all over your internet. The big three, of course, Twitter, Facebook, and what's that on the Instagram, and probably a bunch of other social media that I don't even realize that I'm on. So, regardless, we will catch you guys next week. Rousey, Correa, Hua, Noguera, and Struve, and many others. We'll talk to you later. Peace.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.